So as I'm sure most of you know, we recently got an update on the Hypixel Skyblocik alpha server. Now, this update brought changes and updates to a lot of different parts of Skyblock, but the main topic of change was regarding Ironman profiles. Now, there's been a few changes since that update actually went onto the alpha. Some things that have been changed and some things that have recently been added. Now, this section of the alpha was titled Ironman's W's, and some people are calling it Ironman's L's. Now, obviously I can't speak for everyone, but it seems like a lot of Ironman players, mainly the later game players, are questioning if this update is really Ironman's W's or whether it's L's. But let's go ahead and see why. Is Ironman actually being nerfed? Just taking a look at the day one changes, there's changes to how the Ironman Shen's auction are going to work. There's going to be half the quantity of a regular Shen's auction rather than only 15%, which I think is a good thing. If you want to switch your Ironman profile to a normal profile, it's now tiered. So basically the higher level you are, the longer you'll have to wait, which also makes sense. I guess some people in general find this controversial that you'll now be able to switch an Ironman profile to a normal profile. Not to repeat myself, but I personally don't see it as a really bad thing. If it was the other way around, then of course it's a problem. But honestly, that's just my opinion. When we look at day 2 changes, there's a lot of updates to items that weren't previously NPC sellable, or items that sold for very little to the NPC that have now been increased in value. I'm not going to go through all these items because it's a very big list, but majority of these items weren't sellable previously, which I guess is a good thing for a regular profile because a lot of things you just want an NPC sell to get out of your inventory because they're clutter. But especially for Ironman, it means that a lot of these items that previously were completely pointless when you had massive duplicate numbers are now sellable. For instance, like Dragon Fragments, 10k a pop. It's not too bad. You know, none of these prices are that high as to a point where things are going to crash and be unbalanced, but at the same time, I think majority of these things here are better than they were. And for me, specifically for Ironman profiles, I don't see how really any of these changes can be bad in terms of making items NPC sellable, or maybe getting a little bit more back from that same item. It's important to note that none of those items are going to be worth more or less depending on the profile that you're on. It's not Ironman specific, however I think it's more applicable for Ironman and makes more sense to actually talk about when it comes to Ironman, because most people who are on a regular profile aren't really going to be bothered with the fact that you can now NPC sell Dragon Fragments because you have the Bazaar. Now initially when I was looking at this, the question that was going through my mind is the fact that I just thought a lot of the prices were pretty low. But I think if you actually think about it on the grander scheme, if the prices that you could sell things to the NPC for were close to the market value, it would stop some people selling things on the Bazaar or the AH, just NPC selling them, therefore not really doing very well for the economy. Essentially voiding those items, a very similar thing as to what happened with farming items when their NPC value was upped. The economy was in a bit of a state, let's just say, after that. But in my opinion at the moment there's nothing crazy bad. I still think this is overall probably a W, but maybe it could get worse. But just before we look into that, if you are planning on purchasing anything from the Hypixel store, make sure to use code NITROS as it gets yourself 5% off. If you watch the videos and you haven't already subscribed, please make sure to do so. You should also join the Discord server, it's linked in the description of this video. We offer slays and dungeon carries, so if you need carries or want to carry and make some coins, make sure to join. Okay, so there was a change here under miscellaneous, which was you can no longer hunt axe a mob that another player spawned. Now that's been corrected to hunt axe will no longer take ownership of a mob spawned by another player. Now I can't lie, I'm slightly confused by this wording, because it was pretty simple before. You can no longer hunt axe a mob that's spawned by another player. So if another player spawns a mob, you can't use a hunt axe on it. You can't use your hunt axe on it, they'll be able to use their hunt axe on it. Which means to me, if they've already hit it with their hunt axe, that means that you probably can't hit it with yours. That's the way I see it. Hunt axe will no longer take ownership of a mob spawned by another player. To me, that just seems like they've just reworded this. But I could be wrong. It's a bit of a confusing wording, if I can't lie. So here's the thing. As most of you probably know, the only real thing I've been doing at the moment on Skyblock is playing on the Corp Ironman profile. And by no means am I progressed into Ironman at all. I've played a decent amount, but a lot of it has just been spent messing about and having a laugh. I feel like that's what you should probably do when you play a game anyway. Besides the point. I've done quite a lot of foraging recently in Galatea, and as a byproduct I've done a bit of hunting. Now I've got to a point where I can start to hunt a bit more efficiently, considering I've got Heart of the Forest 6. So I've been starting to hunt because everybody needs shards, and it makes sense for me to start hunting because, well, I'm going to be able to get, shards most efficiently because I've got more hunting fortune. Besides the point, hunting on Ironman is horrible. It's absolutely horrible. You don't realise how bad it is until you realise all of those things that you take for granted, you know, buying things off the bazaar. All of those shards you bought off the bazaar, you have to hunt for yourself. Not only do you have to hunt for yourself, a lot of them you have to fuse, which means you need to hunt for 2 separate shards, then fuse, okay? It's horrible. It is... I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. It's just not a fun time at all. And making changes to basically nerf hunting in this sense is not a step in the right direction. Now, I understand this change is not just aimed at Ironman players, but while we're on the topic of most of this update, you know, being revolving around Ironman, some of it not, I think it's worth mentioning that for Ironman especially, you do not want to be nerfing hunting. If anything, it wants to be buffed. And making it so that potentially multiple players can't, you know, benefit, you know, hunt hacks the same mob and benefit from it. It is, in essence, nerfing it for Ironman players, because if you're on a co-op with somebody, multiple people can do it, therefore you're getting more shards. Now, sure, maybe that's not how it's designed, but at least it makes something that is horrible and really annoying to do that a little bit more bearable and quicker. It's not a major thing, I just thought I'd talk a little bit about it, considering this is something that I've experienced myself on Ironman recently. And yeah, I don't think that is a great idea. Now, as for the actual line that stands now, hunt hacks will no longer take ownership of a mob spawned by another player. Still kind of confuses me, not gonna lie. Now, another controversial one is this right here. Caps the Maniac Miner pickaxe ability to 500 mining fortune. I believe this was previously 1000, so it's been halved. Been cut in half, it's been heavily nerfed. And considering mining is the best way to make money on an Ironman profile, if you completely disregard the setup that you need, full stop, you know, it just is the best once you've got the items you need. This change right here is limiting how much Ironman players can make in terms of money pretty substantially. So now it's a little bit more understandable why people are questioning if this is Ironman's W's or Ironman's L's. Now, something else that is a bit questionable in my opinion is, of course, they've now separated Ironman players from everyone else on classic profiles in Shen's auctions. But this isn't the questionable part. For me, that's probably the right thing to do. Why is it that those items are obtained as soulbound and not co-op soulbound? Doesn't really seem to have any benefit of having them soulbound rather than co-op soulbound. At the end of the day, they're on Ironman profile. They can't leave the co-op unless you decide to change your profile to a regular profile. I don't know, I'm sure there's probably some justification, but I don't really understand it. Especially if you're on Ironman co-op with a few friends, it's notoriously harder to make money on Ironman, and those items in those auctions are going to be expensive. So it only makes sense that you're going to lump your money together that you've grinded up for with your friends or people playing on your co-op to afford one item, which you then can't share, which makes no sense. So it seems that every time there's a tweak or change made to mining, that basically nerfs mining in terms of money making, especially for Ironman players. People always pick up on that, especially Ironman players, and complain about it. And nobody's wrong to do this. I think the fundamental issue is with Ironman is there's just too few ways to make money. Okay, if you think about the main skills, when it comes to combat, for a regular profile, you've got tons of different options in terms of making money. You've got dungeons, you've got slayers, you name it. But for Ironman, it's just not making you really that much money. What could you even make the money from? There's not much you can really do. Farming is an option. You can farm and make money, whether it's pests or crops. It's not going to live up to mining, but you can make money. Fishing's not going to make you a great deal on Ironman. Mining, of course, is the best money-making method on Ironman, which is when it's hit. You know, when it's nerfed, it feels like it's hit so hard. Foraging is not making you any money. I'm 100% sure of that. It's making you... Unless you've got a really, really good setup, he's probably making maximum 5 million coins per hour. It's not worth doing. It's pointless. For money, anyway. And then, you know, nothing else is really going to make you money. Hunting's not going to make you money on Ironman. Yeah, you've just not really got any other options. I think that's the fundamental issue. If you want to make money, you've got either mining or farming. So if one of these is nerfed, even a tiny, tiny bit, it seems like the end of the world. But anyway, that's going to be all for today's video. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'm sure there's probably other things in these you know, the massive change logs that could potentially be implemented that maybe seem like more of an L than a W. But if there are, let me know. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one.